Peter currently holds the role of Development and Communications Manager with Regional Watershed Restoration and Preservation Organization at Prescott Creeks. He has 20 plus years of firefighting and advanced life support, mobile intensive care paramedic service. He continues to hold a professional reserve role as a firefighter paramedic with the Williamson Valley Baghdad Fire District. Peter has a BA with honors in political science and economics from the University of Montana. Pierson currently serves as chairperson of the Prescott Good Governance Committee, a member of Local First Arizona, and a number of other community organizations. A former Unitarian lay minister and chaplain, he is active with the Granite Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation Church in Prescott. Please welcome Peter Pierson.
Well, everyone understand this is a whole new debate, and what the debate before is over. And if they can be quiet and listen to the people speak now, because as we say, you've got to be courteous here, no matter how your feelings heat up. So please pay attention to these people now. It's a whole new debate. And be respectful when you guys know who you are.
Okay. David Stringer is our next candidate for LD1. David Stringer is a retired attorney and small businessman in Prescott. He has owned and operated the Comfort Inn since 2004. He is an active member of the Arizona Bar and Yavapai County Bar Association. He has performed pro bono legal services for a variety of local civic groups. He has served on the boards of a number of local civic organizations, including Big Brothers and Big Sisters, the Prescott Women's Shelter, the Prescott Planning and Zoning Commission, the Charlotte Hall Museum, and Prescott Historical Society. He is an active Republican and currently serves as precinct committeeman and state committeeman. He is a fiscal and social conservative who supports low taxes, small government, state sovereignty, and constitutional government. David Stringer, candidate for LD1. And we're lucky to three this time. Representative Noel Campbell. State Representative Noel Campbell's entire career has been spent in service to our country. First as a Navy pilot who flew combat missions in Vietnam, then as a U.S. Custom agent working on the Mexican border, and finally as a helicopter and tanker pilot fighting fires for the U.S. Forest Service. During his career, Representative Campbell learned the values of teamwork and cooperation, qualities he certainly took to the Capitol with him. In just his first term, he sponsored HB 2107, which gave cities and towns permissive authority to regulate structured timber rentals. The problem has plagued the city of Prescott for more than a decade, and we know one great city councilman that was also helping to fight with that. It passed with overwhelmingly bipartisan support in both houses and was signed by Governor Ducey this past August. Additionally, Representative Campbell worked extensively on Prop 124, which served to reform our failing public pension system. He looks forward to continuing to serve the constituents of LD1 this next legislative session as chairman of the Transportation Committee. Noel Campbell. You gotta see, guys, we only got 2 mics up here, so you're gonna have to share, but you know, I feel the love. I think we can do it. Tell you what, Dave, why don't we get, 2 minutes each for opening statements.
On the whole ship cup.
4 minutes. Peter, you want to start out?
Hey, having been sitting in the back, I realize you can't see us unless you stand. What do you think you got? We're better than that. Each and every one of us in this room. I disagree with most of the things you've done, but you're better than what we just saw. I share a ticket with you, but I think you're a better person than I just saw. I think everyone in this room, David, Noel, me, all of us, we have to be better than that. Simple as that. We have to be better than that, each and every one of us. We do not make political decisions with our head. We as a culture, we as a society, we make political decisions with our gut. There's a lot of good reads on that. I just spoke at the invitation of Emery Riddle the other day on that. No matter what any of us say up here, if we are arguing for or against a proposition or an issue, no matter what facts we might throw out or what emotion we put into it, the likelihood of any of you leaving this room with a different opinion is about zero, because we have made up our minds. And as a people, we then find reasoning and build reasoning to support that decision we make with our gut. That's how we work. I accept it. I know I do it. It dictates what 24-hour news channel we watch. I got into this race because I worked on the bond override in Prescott last year. And I've got a lot of stories about how I got into this. But one of the pivotal stories was an information meeting at a Biojet Elementary School. We have 4 minutes, correct? Okay, thank you, 4 minutes. And then a Biojet informational meeting where a group of parents and educators and kids went up and did cute skits, a lot of facts, a lot of figures. One guy told the story, he's a realtor and a parent. He told the story about having housing sales fall through because there's a young professional family who, when they looked into Arizona's history of budget slashes with the education, the house sale fell through. Now, I know there's more to it than that, but that was a very real story. He also told the story of one of his children being born in a rare blizzard in Prescott. And the baby had a remarkable health effect, needed to be rushed down to Phoenix because they didn't have the care here. And they couldn't do it because of the blizzard. No helicopter, the grounds, and the kid lived. But he was also told that Yavapai Regional Medical Center has a difficult time attracting young doctors because of quite a number of things, including Arizona's history and education spending. But at the end of that event, I was sitting next to Mr. Stringer here, and I want to address him personally. I'll give him that respect. He stood up, and he told that crowd, none of that's going to work, because none of it was true. It wasn't the facts. It wasn't the pie charts. But in saying that, he discounted the experience of the people that were up there talking. It was then that I started thinking that I need to run for this office. We need people in Phoenix at the legislature. And you're welcome for the purple tape. I'll take some credit for that. But we need people who are capable of the dialogue and the discussion and the empathy and the ability to understand and listen to each other. These are complex issues we face that cannot be solved with knee-jerk party ideology on either side. I thank those of you in this room who have actively supported me, those of them that work in this room who are here because they endorsed me. But I welcome a chance to be heard tonight. Simple as that.
Thank you very much. Noel, would you like to take 4 minutes to say hi?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Noel Campbell. I'm your newly elected state representative. I always like to say that. It gives me a good feeling. Listen, I'm not going to talk to you about my bio. You guys all know I'm from Arizona. You know my background. I really want to talk to you about the issues that are coming up this session, things that I want to work on. We live under a heavy constraint now at the legislature. We have to have a balanced budget. And with that restriction, it causes us to make hard choices. There's just so much money, and you have to figure out what are your priorities and where you're going to spend it, because that budget has to be balanced as dictated by our Constitution. That's number one. And because of that, if you want to get anything done with the legislature, you have to work across the aisle. You have to go to your Democrat colleagues with your ideas and sit down and discuss them and see if they can get on board with you. I'll give you a good example. House Bill 2107. You know that bill failed the first year. It was too heavy a lift for the Democrats to license these facilities. But I came back at it the following year after a committee had been given to me, an ad hoc committee, and we investigated all the problems. And then I worked across the aisles with Minority Leader Dr. Eric Meyer. And I worked with these Democrats because this was not a partisan issue. This was an issue that greatly affects Prescott, but is starting to branch out into other parts of the state. And I had to work. And that's where the work is these relationships. You have to deal with these people. You'll get nothing done down there if you're a loose cannon, believe me. You have to be respectful. You have to have your principles, but you have to work and you have to build a consensus. And that's what I did with 2107. I'm the only Republican down there that goes to the Democrat education meetings. Did you know that 52% of Hispanics only graduate from high school? They drop out their sophomore year. Did you know African Americans graduate from high school at about 64%? And they start dropping out in high school. And the Anglos, they graduate on the state average at about 76%. We here in Prescott have a much higher graduation ratio. We graduate our students at around 84, 85%. I go to these meetings because I want to ask questions. We only have so many resources. Where's the best place to put our resources? Is it best to put our resources in pre-K? Or is it the best to put our resources in the sophomore year of high school? That's an important discussion because we know a high school graduate makes X number of dollars more than a high school dropout. And we know a college graduate makes far more money than a high school kid with just a diploma. So these are the kind of issues you have to deal with down there. And I go to those meetings and I ask those questions. They ask me a lot of questions. But they couldn't answer that question. Why does the Democrat Party insist on putting money in pre-K and the first 3 years of high school and completely ignore that 52% of Hispanics are dropping out their sophomore year? It's an important question. And when I asked that question, they couldn't answer it. So there's good things that can be done about that. I'm going to continue to work across the aisle. I'm probably going to be, if I get elected, the voters feel sorry for me again. I will get elected. I'll be the transportation chairman. And we know the problems in transportation. It's not like we don't know what the problems are. I traveled all over the state. I went to 5 meetings. We know the problems. It's a question of how do you get the revenue. Are you willing to pay more tax to get the I-17 fixed? Are you willing to pay more gas tax to have Highway 69 widened? These are the kind of questions we're going to be dealing with this year. And if I'm fortunate enough to get back down there, I hope that you'll let me know what your feelings are about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Noel. David, you want to take 4 minutes and let us know who you are?
Chris, thanks so much, and thank you, Noel. Most of you know me, so I'm not going to go into a lot of bio. We seem to see each other at a lot of events, so I won't bore you with recitation of my educational background and what I've done here in Prescott as a small businessman and my involvement with a lot of community things. Before I get into what I really want to talk about, though, I want to thank Mr. Pierson for being here tonight, because it's pretty obvious. I think he deserves a lot of credit, and so does the other gentleman, Weisner. It's pretty obvious this is a conservative crowd. This is basically a group of Republicans, conservative independents, and maybe not the most friendly turf to Mr. Pierson. So I think it takes courage and decency for him to show up, and I'd like to thank him. I wish I could get invited to some Democratic events.
I'll have one. We'll have you there.
Maybe Mr. Pierson or Mr. Weiser can put in a word for me, but I have a feeling that maybe they're just afraid of me. And I don't mind it. That can be pretty scary, right? I want to thank CTC for having this event. I think many of you know, who've known me for a little while, that CTC is where I actually got my start in politics. I'm 69 years old. This is still pretty new to me. But in 2013, I was at an RWAP luncheon, and I won't mention their names, but a few ladies were standing up talking about the school bond and budget override of 2013. And they started saying things that I knew were just not true. So afterward, John Stevens also spoke for a few minutes, and after the luncheon, and I know John remembers this, I came up to him and introduced myself. We really didn't even know each other. I told him I'd like to work with CTC on this issue. So the work we did in 2013 through CTC, opposing the school bond, they were the Yes, Yes campaign, and our campaign was It's a No-No. And it was the first time anybody actually put on a campaign opposing school bonds and budget overrides. We put up the signs, we had radio spots. I think I even did a TV spot that year. And of course, we defeated the bond and budget override by a pretty healthy margin. It was a huge shock to people like Mr. Pierson and to the school officials. What they hadn't told us, of course, is that the school district had lost over 1,000 students. They had empty classrooms. They had school buses running with 4 or 5 students in them. So we did defeat those bonds, saved the taxpayers, I think it was something around $30 million. And that was my first introduction to politics in Yavapai County. Then we went on to do the, I won't talk too much about this one, the jail tax, which I'm still living with. But in any event, it was a successful election. And then we did PSPRS this past, was it November? And so we were successful on all those, defeating all those budget initiatives, tax initiatives. We haven't, of course, opposed every single one. Didn't we all agree about streets and roads, the 1% on streets and roads? So we have supported tax initiatives. In the last election cycle, I think that the two initiatives, Prop 123 and 124, I actually supported both of those and ran radio ads, spent my own money because I thought the teachers did deserve a raise. And I supported the budget override in 2013. So when Mr. Weisner and Mr. Pierson talk about my lack of support for schools, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's a false narrative. Every tax initiative stands or falls on its own merits. Yes. I support them when they're worthy, and I oppose them when they're not. I want to talk about a few of my priorities, if I am fortunate enough to get elected, and they include education as number one. Many of you know that I'm actually enrolled in a master's program, working on a degree in English as a second language, because English language learners are such a challenge to our educational system, and I see that I'm out of time, but I have a lot more to say, so I hope we get some good questions.
Yeah, why don't you keep the mic right now, and go ahead, give it a hand. Our first question is, the state seems to get upset when the federal government imposes rules and mandates on them, yet the state turns around and forces the same type of overreach on the cities and towns, some of which are chartered cities or home rule cities. Examples would be taking away the right of cities to collect their own sales tax, or telling a city when it's all right for them to hold an election. Do you see this as a problem, and if so, what would you do about it?
Chris, thank you, and I forgot how long we have. Is it 1 minute, 2 minutes? Sorry, I don't have 2 minutes worth of stuff to say about that, but I can make it very short and very simple. Sure. I believe the best government is the government that is closest to the people. I support local government and local control. So I do think municipalities should have the most discretion and most authority to run their own affairs, and that includes sales tax, collecting their own sales tax, and deciding how to spend their own sales tax. So I do not support unfunded liabilities from the federal government or from the state government. Now, there are certain things that have to be statewide, and I know there's a few initiatives that have come up from the legislature about regulating plastic bags from the stores and things of that nature. There are some nuances to those things that make me think that maybe the state was right about those things. It makes it very difficult for business to operate when you start having sort of a patchwork of regulations around the state. So there's some overriding issues, I think, that need to be obviously state issues. But as a general principle, I believe that the best government is the government that is closest to the people, and I support local control.
Noel, what's your thoughts on the overreach of the state when it comes to cities and towns?
Yeah, it's one thing to talk about that, but then you have to vote. And you have to vote on it. We had that last year, the plastic jug bill, plastic bag bill. And that basically was, are we going to give the cities and local communities the authority to regulate plastic bags, plastic jugs on the street, etc.? I was the only Republican that voted to allow the cities to control the plastic bags and plastic jugs. So I believe in the lowest control. Now, I understand the opposite argument, the economic portion of it. But I thought it's more important that the city of Scottsdale or Prescott be able to control that stuff. They're closest to the people that live in the neighborhoods and in the cities. I also had to vote on the bill that dealt with these B&Bs in our neighborhoods. And I voted with the realtors and the homeowners in single-family neighborhoods that did not want to have vacation rentals in their neighborhood. I understand the pluses for the city. The B&B collects the tax and remits it to the city. That's a good thing. There are a few people out there that are renting their houses that are not paying the tax. We understand that. But on the final analysis, if you live in a single-family neighborhood, and I do, I'm careful about who comes in and lives next to me if they're temporary. And so once again, I voted against my party, and I voted to support that local control bill. It wasn't easy. Anytime you go against your leadership, you pay a price for that. So, my thoughts on that.
Peter, what do you think? Is there overreach, and what are we going to do about it if there is?
I think calling it overreach is disingenuous. the plastics bill is a classic case. These accusations of the federal government overreaching on to the state overreaching on the locals, they're done along ideological lines. They're not done along practical lines. I'll say that on both sides of the aisle. They're not done with any practical purposes. The plastic bill, which I've heard you say it many times, and I commend you for voting against that. The primary reason that failed was because of a massive amount of influence the American plastics industry under the American Legislative Exchange Council has in our state government. They crafted that bill. It's a rubber stamp from bills that were passed in other parts of the country and other states. I think to address it, I would be terribly patronizing if I would say I want to do this, this, and this. We just need to recognize the reality. These bills limiting or expanding up and down the political spectrum, the political influence, the political levels, is done on ideological lines. It's not done on practical lines. You look at something like the plastics bill, how many communities said it would save how many hundreds of thousands of dollars on waste processing if they eliminated plastics, but that had nothing to sway it. We need to simply, as a legislature and as a community and as communities in the state, just realize we are motivated not so much by practicality, but by ideology, and somehow look beyond that. And it starts with getting someone down there to work with Noel who actually can't do that.
Thank you. Noel, why don't you grab the microphone? You know, education is our biggest expense. We feel that using the state trust fund and land is a short-term fix, and when we get ripped that Band-Aid off in 10 years, it's going to leave us, going to take the scab with it, leaving a gaping wound. I wrote that. Is there a way to simplify funding and assure adequate and reliable revenue source for the funding of our public schools?
There's no easy answer to that question. I mean, that's the $64 jackpot question. How do we fund it? Let me just say Prop 123. I supported Prop 123. I worked on that bill for a year, as I did Prop 124. I was a freshman, but I just kicked my way in and said, I want to sit in on these meetings because I want to know what we're going to do to help fund our public education. Prop 123, not a perfect bill, but remember, they've got overwhelming Democrat teachers associations and taxpayer associations compromise. It was a compromise bill. That's why it got through. But look what we did. We got $3.5 billion put into the public school system over the next 10 years. Is that enough? I don't know. But it was something. It was major. I mean, and we did it without a tax increase. Stop and think about that. Through Governor Ducey's leadership, we were able to use our state trust lands, which is what they're for. And you can argue whether the trust fund is going to increase slightly or decrease slightly. But the fact is, we got over $70 billion of state trust land valuation that's sitting there, and we need to use it. And we did use it. So we did something positive. Now, what are we going to do coming up? I don't know. We're waiting to see what shoe's going to drop. Because remember, we have to have a balanced budget. And when you start talking about increasing school funding, you've got to get that money from someplace. And it's really funny because we don't hear any Democrat proposals for where that money should come from. They just say we need to do this, but they don't look at it how we're going to do it. Okay? And that's why, we'll get into this, I am a supporter of parental choice and ESAs, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, in a little bit.
Peter, is there a way to simplify funding and assure an adequate and reliable revenue source for funding our public schools?
So, anyone who tells you there is lying to you. 1, 2, 3, I voted for it. 1, 2, 3 is a piece of extortion, is all it was, though. I voted for it, though. Threatening the schools to take it back to court and have nothing or take 72 cents on the dollar. I voted for it. But as most of the progressives and most of the educators, they had to hold their nose. And we're waiting for what's next. Or you can take the stance that now that we've got 1, 2, 3 passed, and I quote, we don't have, if certain economic triggers are met, we don't have to worry about funding education at all. You take that approach. I suggest we follow the lead of State Treasurer DeWitt. You know that arch liberal, screaming nutbag liberal DeWitt, working on the Trump campaign now? He's going to go and take the guns and everything else. He was against 1, 2, 3. Why? Two things. He was against the idea of withdrawing principal, as any good investor does, to save short-term money. He was also against it because he said they had a budget surplus that would have covered a good part of it to get it under manageable. And you know what the answer he received from our state leadership was? It had already been earmarked for additional tax incentives. It was there without raising your taxes one bit. Now look at how we're going to solve funding for education. Marijuana. The next one coming up is an excise tax been proposed on energy that we export. And you hear with an economics background, what happens when you reduce the supply and demand goes up? Your electric bills will go up. We keep looking for these short-term fixes. Tax marijuana, tax energy. Education is a public responsibility. We need to accept that as a state and stop looking for these short-term fixes that keep thrown at us. Do I have a solution? No, but it starts with looking at how we look at economic development, not with tax incentives, but with reinvestment in our communities, in our infrastructure, our schools. It's very simple.
David, you got any thoughts on the subject?
Education is my signature issue. I've been studying this now for several years, and I have a lot of thoughts on it. And the one thing I would like to accomplish more than anything, if I get to the state legislature, is to be part of the solution to education funding in the state of Arizona. Peter and Noel are both correct. There is no easy answer to this. There's no easy answer for Arizona. There's no easy answer for any state. It is a huge challenge to fund education adequately. But more important than funding education, it's a huge challenge to improve student outcomes. Yes. So on Prop 123, as I told you, I did support it. It is a flawed bill. It is a flawed solution. It is an incomplete solution. And I know many of people in this room, friends of mine, strongly opposed it. I'm a friend of Jeff DeWitt, and he strongly opposed it. So I understand the arguments against it. I thought on balance, because it does get money into the classroom in a very short order, and it helps get teacher raises. It's a temporary fix. We're obviously going to have to revisit the issue. I do not think it's going to destroy the state land trust. I don't think that's the best argument against it. I think the state land trust is going to be fine. But I want to make a point here about school funding. I had an opportunity to attend a seminar a couple of weeks ago put on by the Arizona School Board Association and ASU and some other groups, pro-school funding groups. And one of the things they told us, and I think they're right, is that Arizona ranks 48 in comparison with other states on school funding. And that's a narrative that they have been putting out. Arizona underfunds education, we're at 48. The truth of the matter is, our student achievement scores are about 25 or 26. The two 49 and 50 states are Idaho and Utah, not Alabama and Mississippi, Idaho and Utah that are in the top tier of student achievement. So funding is not correlated with student achievement. And anything to the contrary is a false narrative Pierson.
You know, Peter, I got to tell you a story. This fall, I drove my daughter almost the entire length of I-40 to Virginia to drop her off at school, and I drove back. A week later, I drove from Seattle to Prescott. By far, the worst stretch of interstate of the 7,500 miles I drove was Arizona's section of I-40. Some parts were so bad that the 18-wheelers would not drive in the right-hand lane. The feds give all the states money to take care of this, and it seems like most of them do. Why aren't we? After seeing the condition of I-40, I'm afraid the Grand Canyon may have to compete with the interstate for tourists wanting to see the biggest hole in Arizona.
You go to the Mayor Township, their city council forum. What are we going to do about our streets? What are we going to do about our roads? County commissioners, they're livid because the state legislature cut their HERF funding and waived the, oh, look, we balanced the budget. You read the story, say some of it, and everyone's yelling at the county. I live in the county, I don't live in the city. And everyone's yelling about the roads. Everyone's looking at I-40, you're yelling at the federal government. This is a zero-sum game, people. These problems don't fix themselves. For one level of government to slash their budgets and infrastructure, it gets passed down to the next level of governments. It does the same for schools, it does the same for everything. We've hit kind of a zero-sum game. I don't know if there was a question in there. I-40 is awful. I'm from Alaska and northern Minnesota. I've seen a lot worse, but we need to, there's no simple fix. It's a change in ideology and attitude. Again, when the state slashes the county's HERF budget, which they did, and waved the balanced budget flag, and then the counties are being blamed for the poor quality of the county roads, it's an absurd game we're playing. You look at the sales tax issues around here, and you go to the Prescott Council, oh, they're worried that everyone's going to buy their cars in Prescott Valley. You go to Prescott Valley, they're worried they're going to buy their cars in Anthem, and you go to Anthem, and oh, they're worried that it's going to happen in Mesa. We're all on the same playing field. It doesn't make any sense to keep having these fights about who's cutting the taxes or saving people money when it just gets passed off to the next level of government. We need to change that. How that happens? We need to change. Like I said, I think we're better than that, and I'm going to stick to it.
David, I'm going to clarify just a little bit because it sounds like I confused Mr. Pierson, and you also always have the ability to take a 1-minute additional statement. Through personal observation and experience, I drove from west to east, east to west, north to south, and by far, Arizona had the worst roads in the country. How come everyone else is fixing their roads and we can't?
Chris, I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm in the Minnesota business. And I travel a lot. I travel everywhere. I've been all over the world, all over the country. I think I've been to all 50 states now. Maybe one or two I've been to Maine. But in any event, I just, over the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot of road trips. I used to keep a car out in D.C. because I spent a lot of time in D.C. But I brought my car back a couple of years ago, and I drove across the country, visited a lot of presidential libraries, and had an opportunity to drive through a lot of states and a lot of secondary roads. I was up in Denver and Michigan this past summer, so I do a lot of road work. I don't see that the roads are all that bad. I do agree about I-40. It is shockingly bad to be in a United States interstate highway. The reason our roads and infrastructure is underfunded is because we don't have the damn money. Nobody has the damn money because we are a poor country. We are becoming a third world country, and we don't have the money to fix things anymore because we spent so damn much money on foreign wars that we can't win, and on welfare and food stamps and all kinds of crap like that. We have squandered our wealth, and we have anti-business policies. We've had them for years in this country, and that's why we don't have economic growth, and we don't generate the tax revenues that we need to fix our roads. Something as simple and basic as fixing our roads. So I don't need to be taking issue with you. We do have some very bad roads, but we also have pretty good roads. I drive around Arizona a lot, and I see pretty good roads. What I see is the congestion. And believe me, I've spent my time on I-17. I want to fix it really bad, and I support Noel and his effort to find a solution for 69 and for I-17 and for 260 up in Oak Creek. We need to get these roads fixed, and if it takes a little bit of a gas tax hike to do it, I'm open to that. No toll road.
You know, I was going to blame it on Gosar because he used to be a dentist, and I always lose a lot of fillings when I go down I-40. But you're not in the business no more. Noel, what do you think?
Well, you know, the last time the gas tax was raised was in '92. $1 of tax revenue in 1992 is worth 47 cents today just due to inflation. We haven't even kept up with inflation. And so the problem is that in the economic downturn, the Arizona State Legislature can raid funds to rob Peter to pay Paul. And what they did is they took this money out of the Highway User Fund because, you know, that fund builds up rapidly. Every time you buy gas, tax is paid. That fund accumulates rapidly, and that's a big pile of money for the legislature to look at when they need money to balance a budget or to fight off severe economic recession. They did that. They've taken over $2 billion from the Highway Users Fund over the last few years. That's got to stop. And it did stop last year. They took out $120 million approximately from HERF to fund the Department of Public Safety, our highway patrol. we were able to reestablish and put $96 million back into the HERF fund. And of that, we took $60 million of it, and we're widening the I-10 from Casa Grande to Picacho Peak. We're putting in 3 lanes. That's happening right now. We are also putting in an access road from the Mariposa Port in Nogales to the I-19 so that our growers and commerce can expedite to get up to Phoenix and parts north. So we did 2 things. And we took the rest of that money, $36 million, and divided it up to the counties through a formula. Mainly Maricopa County and Pima County get 50% of what's left over, and the other 13 counties divide that up. So we did that. But the point is, we have got to figure out how to raise revenue. And the question you have to ask yourself, are you going to support that? Because no politician, and me included, is going to step forward with a tax-raising plan for roads and be out there by himself. The governor's got to get on board. The legislator's got to get on board. The League of Cities and Towns. Citizens have to get on board. We have to move forward together. If we do that, we will.
David, Jan Smith wants to know, you see illegal immigration as a problem? And if so, what can the state do about it?
First, I don't know how any sane person cannot understand what a problem immigration is to us. As Ronald Reagan said, and how Donald Trump says, and I say, a country without borders is not a country. A country is not just a collection of people. A country is shared culture, shared language, very often shared religion, shared ancestry. That's what nations that last are made up of. We used to be like that. But we opened our borders in 1965 with the Great Society, the Immigration Reform Act of 1965, changed our immigration policy, and we are now flooded with immigrants. And they tell us this enriches us. How many of you feel richer? Many of you remember 1965. How many of you people really feel richer? We are a poorer country, and a country that is becoming a third world country largely because we don't control our borders. So I think immigration is a huge problem. It is destroying our country. It is tearing us apart. It will inevitably, if we don't do something about it, result in some kind of civil disorder and a dissolution of the United States as we know it. This is the history of diversity and the history of the racial spoil system that inevitably results from a multicultural society. What is the state going to do about it? We're kind of limited, and that's the problem. All the states are limited in what they can do, and the states are going to organize to put pressure on the federal government. I think that's probably the ultimate solution. But we can do a few things here in terms of protecting our border. We can use our National Guard. I think Governor Ducey has made some moves in that direction. I think stronger immigration patrols and stronger immigration enforcement within the state of Arizona can help. But there is no simple state solution to this problem. It's going to have to be a national solution. And I think the federal government doesn't want to do it. The states are going to have to force the federal government to do it.
No illegal immigration, what do you think?
I don't know, most of you don't know that I lived in Mexico as a student. I turned 21 years old in Mexico City. And my Spanish is pretty good. I have good conversational Spanish. I can eat in the street in order, get along pretty well. And I've traveled all over Mexico. And I worked on the border for 27 years. I worked out of San Isidro, Mexico, El Paso. I know the border issues. I agree with David that we need to secure the border. That can be done. It doesn't have to be with a wall. It can be with technology. We can secure 95% of that border if we put the effort into it. That's all we're asking for. And I believe we need about a 10-year timeout from immigration, legal immigration. We need to be able to assimilate and work these problems out. But I'm not threatened by immigrants at all. I am actively working with the Arizona-Mexico Commission to bring in more economic activity from Sonora, from Hermosillo. You people who've not traveled into Mexico, Mexico is not a third world country by any stretch of the imagination. They have a better road system than we have here. It's a toll road system. If you travel all over Mexico, you travel on very high quality toll roads. They've just put in a super highway from Mazatlan to Durango that cut 6.5 hours off of the old highway. And now their growers that were normally shipping up here in Arizona are backtracking from Culiacan to Mazatlan to use the new bridge and the highway to go to Texas because Texas wants their business. We've got to get that business here in Arizona. So I'm very optimistic about economic activity between Arizona and the state of Sonora. Okay? And does that mean I want open borders? Absolutely not. We need to control who comes in and who goes out. And if you look at the immigration laws of Mexico, they make our laws look very weak. They have very strong immigration laws. So let's not confuse the issue. We as Republicans want to secure our border and figure out who's coming in and who's going out, but we also want to increase commerce, and we do not want to demonize anybody south of the border.
Peter, Jim Smith wants to know where you see illegal immigration as a problem.
I agree with President Ronald Reagan. In the minds of many of you, is one of the greatest presidents that ever walked the earth. Follow your gut. Follow your gut. Ronald Reagan, in 1984, said he agrees with the idea of amnesty for those who have put down roots and lived here. I don't know if I buy that. But the issue is Noel, I got to give you credit. That was one of the best answers you've given in one of the forums yet. And I say that as a compliment. I didn't mean to demean it. It's a complex issue. Yes, we do need to secure our borders, but that it's taken the national stage the way it has is tragic. It is one of the most divisive issues. When even President Bush, George W. Bush, he wanted to see some form of amnesty, and border security started with a worker program, a controlled worker program, and so we can manage the border better. I don't have an answer, but I think we need to embrace once again the idea it's much more complex than just the knee-jerk reaction we get from watching whichever news channel we choose to watch. 1070, Arizona tried it. It's a federal issue. You're right. Arizona tried it. 1070, some of it's still there. A lot of it got turned down to the Supreme Court. Do know, 1070 was funded in good part by the Corrections Corporation of America. Why? Because all those illegal aliens who were going to be rounded up and put in prisons, those are full beds. Again, I don't mean to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but we don't have the capacity as a society to have objective decisions until we clear our own minds and clear our state legislature from the pathetic influence of outside PAC money that is plaguing our decision-making process right now. Thank you.
You don't know, you did something in your first year. You ran with a bill, and everyone around you was saying, no first-year guy ever runs with a bill and gets it done. But you were on that. Richard Steelman wants to know what you three feel is on your radar screen for the next session, and what do you think you're going to try and run with?
Well, there's a couple of things. I will say it was kind of a funny anecdote. When I was a freshman, and I had the minority leader come up to me and he said, "No, you're a freshman. What the hell are you doing? You're supposed to be running these little technical bills. You're not trying to change state medical law." He actually said that to me, and I was so ignorant. I said, "Well, I don't know. I want to try to fix this problem." And so, because I was ignorant, it gave me the ability to say, "Well, I'm going to do this." And I found out that just butting your head against the wall counts for a lot. Just staying on it and staying on it. So, this upcoming session, I still want to work on some of the medical issues that deal with the sober living homes. There is a lot of fraud involved. And we want to, there's a bill that's been passed in Florida that I made a model on an upcoming bill that I might present, I'm not sure yet. But it deals with these structured sober living homes recruiting kids and recruiting them from other structured sober living homes for a payback or a kickback. There is fraud in that industry. And Florida has tried to regulate that. And if it's bad enough here and I get enough support for people who want me to work on that, I will do that. Mainly, though, I really want to work on the transportation issues. I want to see if we can actually get something done. And I don't know. You don't want to push a rock up a hill. And if the governor of the state of Arizona is not behind getting more revenue into this state for transportation, then it isn't going to work. And so before I ever start pushing a bill, I start talking to the governor's office. I start talking to his staff, saying, where's the governor fit on this? And the governor, he has little ways of giving you encouragement. You know, and the staff will come by and say, well, he thinks it's a good idea. Maybe you ought to look at that some more. That's encouragement. That's kind of a nod. But if he says, they come back and they say, you know, not this time now. It's not the right time. So we'll see where the governor wants to go. And where he goes, I'll go.
Hey, Peter, what would be on your radar screen for the next session?
Taking legislative measures to repeal or abolish Senate Bill 1516, which increased the amount of private donations to go through outside PACs and reduce the accountability for those. That Noel was, his claim to fame has been one of, I think you're one of four in the Senate and House that actually voted against it. I would get that. I would repeal that very quickly. The bottom line, though, we've all seen it. Right now, getting a bill passed or not, you've used the word already, it's a system of extortion down there. The last 2 years, the budget, which sets policy, was done behind closed doors, released at 11 o'clock at night, 2 in the morning, and in Noel's and Karen Phan's defense, when they realized they had just gutted the state technical education funding program, they said they never had a chance to read it. And was it 2 or 3 years ago that Steve Pierce was one of the Senate that abstained to hold it up? He had 2 bills pulled from his committee the next week. That's not legislation. That's extortion to hold to a party line. It would be disingenuous of me to go down and just oppose my own party ideology, which, but honestly, I disagree with some things of it. We need to clear out the influence of the PAC money, and it's particularly the American Legislative Exchange Council, regardless of what color shirt you wear. That is just a travesty to democracy, and I'm going to hold anyone elected this year to that.
Noel, you wanted a 1-minute rebuttal to that?
You know, that's absolutely ridiculous what he said there. But there's no extortion going on down there. You have, the first year there was a new Speaker of the House and we had a new governor. We had to balance this budget. We had to get our financial house in order. And to do that, we had to get everybody on board. And the way that happened was a new speaker put a lot of pressure on all of us to go along with a set piece to get our budget balanced. And that happened. And I wasn't happy about it. And I actually said I regretted that I had to vote for it. But I did it. It was like taking castor oil when you're sick. Nobody likes it, but it was good for you. And that first year, nobody liked it, but it was good for us. The second year, they tried the same thing, and we revolted. 15 Republicans said, no, you're not going to shove a budget down us. We have things we want to do, and we were able to fully fund the JTED here, $33 million we put back in. We put over $16 million back into the university system. We put money back into the HERF. There was no extortion. We did what we were supposed to do. We stood up for our constituencies and our counties. So don't let anybody ever tell you that there's extortion going on. It's not true.
Dave? Hang on a second. Peter, you wanted a 1-minute rebuttal.
Operative word there. And I sincerely respect Noel being one of those, but key words here, restore. You know, which, I don't know if you followed the JTAD, they restored $37 million of what they had just taken out. And then there was a 3-day delay between the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans as to who would take credit for the bill of putting back what they just took out. I don't see that as effective or efficient. I'd like to add some voices to the choir down there that insist that we do it right the first time and don't have to backpedal and restore things that we just got it the week before.
Hey, David, what is on your radar for the next session? If you had to run with something, what are you going to run with and try and push?
Chris, thanks very much.
Thanks for your patience.
I'm sorry?
Thanks for your patience.
The first thing I want to say is that my purpose of going to the legislature is to support the governor's agenda and the Republican agenda. And with all respect to Peter Pierson is not going to do a damn thing. Not because he doesn't want to, but because Peter Pierson is a Democrat. And the Democrats have virtually no authority or control of the state legislature. We are going to have a Republican legislature, and Democrats get hardly anything done. The only thing they get done is when they vote with the Republicans. So Mr. Pierson can go down there and he can huff and he can puff and he can lecture us. But the reality is, he's not going to get anything passed because the Republican committees don't let bills come to the floor that aren't Republican bills. Okay? So, and I'm sorry, Peter, to tell you that, but that's the way it is. No, I don't necessarily think it's a good thing, but it is the political reality, and that's because the Democrats have been so partisan. You blame the Republicans, but the Democrats have been just as partisan, if not more so. Now, I'm told that freshman legislators get to meet the governor, and they get a face-to-face meeting with the governor. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell Governor Ducey about what my priorities are. The first one is infrastructure. I am going to support Noel Campbell as chairman of the Transportation Committee to try to get some fixes to the highway and road problems up here in northern Arizona. I think that's critical, and I'm going to share that with Governor Ducey. The other thing I'm going to tell Governor Ducey is that I support him in his effort to lower taxes in the state of Arizona. Governor Ducey has said he is committed to reducing the state income tax to as close to zero as possible. I support that, and I will support his efforts to reduce the personal state income tax in Arizona. The third thing is corrections, but I think I'm running out of time. I think we lock too many people up in Arizona, and we need to find some alternatives to the expense of incarceration. Sorry.
No, thank you very much. You know, before we let you guys do your closing statements, I just wanted to thank Paul and Michael for showing up tonight, and all the candidates up here, you know, Peter, David, Noel. I mean, really, a round of applause. They've been good answers. We got the room till 10 o'clock, and we invite any of the candidates to hang out up here. We're going to do the 50-50. Yeah, we're getting to that. Come on. Should we do the 50-50 now?
Yeah.
Want to make some money before we close? Now, let's do the closing first. That'd be right. And you know what? I tell you what, Peter, you started before. Why don't we start on the other end, David? 2 minutes to close us out.
Let me use my closing to talk about something that really didn't come up with and we didn't talk too much about. Actually, two things. The first one, I want to finish my thought on corrections. I'm not sure that most of the people in this room know that the idea that we lock too many people up for too long, and we have the correctional system in the United States and in the state of Arizona and many other states simply costs too much. This has become a Republican idea. Newt Gingrich, Rick Perry, Governor Abbott in Texas, many governors around the country have embraced this idea that we simply are spending too much money locking people up for non-violent offenses. I need to make that very, very clear. This is not a public safety issue. This is a matter of locking up non-violent offenders for long periods of time, and it is extremely expensive. It costs more money to send somebody to prison than it does to send them to college. Okay? So we need to start looking at this. The state of Arizona has the highest incarceration rate per capita in the United States. The Yavapai County has the highest incarceration rate in the state of Arizona. So this is something that I think we need to be thinking about. I think we can find real savings in our budget by not locking up so many nonviolent offenders. We'll have any time left, Eddie. I also wanted to talk about the empowerment scholarship accounts because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about that. I am a school choice supporter. I believe in parental rights. I think parents are the best judges of where their children should go to school. So I support school choice very, very strongly. But one of the things that is on the agenda is the expansion of empowerment scholarship accounts. I support them, but I do think it's important that we have accountability, and that we both in the fiscal area and in the academic area. So physical accountability, academic accountability with the expansion of empowerment scholarship accounts, which are not a threat to public education, as very, very few parents will take advantage of them. It takes a tremendous amount of parental involvement. So I'm out of time, but those are my areas. Thank you.
Noel, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, real quickly, I want to second what David said about the empowerment scholarships. I support parental choice. I support homeschooling, parochial schools, private schools, charter schools. I support whatever works, okay? So every kid that's educated and can come out of school and be a good citizen, that's a win for our society. So now, I don't think that the public schools should be threatened by empowerment scholarships. 85% of all of our students go to public schools. And the 15% that don't, they have strong parental support. And I don't see much more strong parental support than is already there. The empowerment scholarships right now there's 25,000 available, and only 2,900 are being used. And in the state of Nevada, where it's completely open to everyone, every parent, only 1% of the parents choose the Empowerment Scholarship. There are some issues with it. It is state money. It comes out of the general fund, and the money is given on a credit card, and it goes to the parent to use for the education of that child. The people that say that there is no accountability, that's not true. The parents have to do quarterly reports, audits, random reports, and there's been very little fraud. They found one case, $60,000 out of $15 million spent. So I support empowerment scholarships, but I also support our local schools. You say, how can you do that? Well, I voted for the bond and override. I support public schools here. We have good schools here, okay? But I believe it's the parents' right to choose the education for their children. Lastly, I want to say, come down to the Capitol if you like. I'll lead you around and show you the bathroom areas, where everything is at, you know. Wait a second, let me think about that. No, I'll show you how to get in and up out of the elevators. How's that? So come down. If you drop me an email, a handwritten email, like a letter, and you put a phone number to it, I'll call you back. May not get back to you immediately, but I will call you back. That's all I can do. Thank you very much.
I look around this room, and I never once thought not to come. I never once imagined I'd be treated harshly. I look around this room and I see people who have pulled me aside and have said, I'm telling everyone to single shot me. That's just one or two of you. And there's a lot of people that aren't here because of that. I was just at, we've had a number of forums, and Noel and David, this is the first one in a while that you haven't been challenged on the fact that David Stringer's received more, he's benefited from, Semantics benefited from more than I can spend in the entire election from outside PAC money supporting his campaign. And I've heard a lot of people challenge Noel as to how can he, as a king elections, collaborate and share advertising expenses with him. And the answers I heard the other day sounded a little bit defensive. David Stringer, your response was, you might be against dark money, but given the political climate these days, and I quote, it's the price we pay for democracy. And Noel, I think you among other people here, Noel, I have the microphone.
Well, you're misquoting.
No, I have the microphone. I am quoting you directly. I am quoting you directly. There are people in this room that know the true value or the true price of democracy. And for this, for the influx of dark money that has flooded the state's election and this election, to be passed off as just the ends justify the means is wrong. It's absolutely wrong. That's why I'm running. And I listened to Noel for years. We need to increase revenues. We need to support. We need to increase revenues. We need to support. We agree on a lot of things, but good God. Could you imagine the possibilities of actually working with someone in your own district across the aisle that agrees with you on so many things, rather than somebody whose ideology is the antithesis of doing that? Legacy time, Noel. Legacy time, Noel. And I'm going to challenge you from here until election day, and I'm probably going to lose. Simply because there's an R behind his name, and he's outspending me 5-1. The ends don't justify the means.
Well, thank you very much for showing up.